Recording in progress.
Okay, well, it is 7:15. Thank you everybody for joining the Norton Planning Board's meeting of Tuesday, May the 25th. Somehow it is already late May. Again, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th order imposing a limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Norton's Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right or requirement to attend the meeting can be found on the Town of Norton's website, that is nortonma.org. For this meeting, you may participate in the following ways. To join online via video, please use the Zoom link posted on the meeting agenda. If you prefer using the Zoom app, the meeting ID is 638-929-1060. There's also a dial-in number posted on the agenda for this meeting. This meeting is also available on Norton Cable Access Channel 15 or the next day on the Norton Media Center's YouTube page. Again, no in-person attendance from members of the public is being permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In addition, please feel free to email questions to the board ahead of the meeting or during the meeting to Paul DiGiuseppe, the town planner, whose email address is listed on the town's website and this meeting agenda. Again, you'll find meeting materials on the Norton Planning Board's website. Again, every effort is being made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings. If we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Norton's website audio, video recording, transcript, or other record of the proceedings as soon as possible thereafter. Okay, with that mouthful out of the way, I'm going to take a breath and move ahead with Planning Board business and policies. I don't think we have anything on the agenda there. And Paul, I didn't see any bills or warrants in the folder.
But you will be signing one tomorrow. It's the monthly Verizon bill.
Aha, lovely, lovely. And are we still waiting on, I know there was some movement in terms of additional staffing within the office, but we don't have any minutes to approve it at this point, correct?
No, it looks like next week we will be interviewing several candidates for the administrative secretary position, but I just don't have the bandwidth to type minutes. Just a lot going on, and hopefully I'll get to report some of that out later.
Okay. Well, with that, the next item on the agenda is the election of a representative to Serpent. Paul, do you want to give just a brief overview of who Serpent is and what they do for the new members of the planning board who may or may not be aware?
So Serpent is our regional planning agency. It's the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District. They perform a lot of functions. They're primarily a planning and economic development arm. They also do emergency management and other important functions. We fall within their district, and there are a number of boards that they have that Norton has representatives on, but one of which is they always have a representative of a planning board on their committee. Steve has been the most recent. I don't know, Steve, Chair, if Steve has anything more to add, but not been able to partake in those.
Yeah, so Steve, I don't know if you want to give a summary of how the meetings have gone recently, and then we'll move ahead to nominations.
It's very interesting. It's a lot of good. They do a lot of good for all the local towns. So I've been the representative for 3 or 4 years at least now. So if anybody wants to volunteer to be on it, that's fine with me.
Okay. If anybody has any more questions, I'm sure Paul has a lot more context that he can give if we need it. Otherwise, I would look for we have nominations for our representative for Serpent. can also nominate yourself should you choose.
This is what happened last year. I mean, if nobody wants to volunteer, I'll do it again.
If you don't want to do it, Steve, I'll do it. If you want a year off.
It's not that I don't want to. It's just I'd like to give somebody else a chance if they wanted to. That's all. So if you would like to, that'd be great.
Alan, is that official?
At the risk of my wife hating me even more, yes.
Okay.
The month, it's usually at the end of the month. I think it's tomorrow night is the meeting.
Okay. If we see anything come into the Zoom screen and hit you in the head, then we'll know what's going on. But other than that, we have a nomination. Do we have a second?
I will second the
Okay.
nomination of Alan. And you can tell your wife it's all my fault, Alan. You can blame me.
I will, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I will go to a quick roll here on the election of Alan as our Serpent representative. I'll start with Wayne. You're first up.
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So, Alan, you are a representative to Serpent. Paul and/or Steve, I guess I'll let you two connect with Alan regarding kind of how to join the meetings, and anything that's kind of in motion, and how you want to hand that off. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'll forward over the. I think I have it on my company email. The nomination form. I think it has to be signed by you, Tim.
Okay.
So I'll get that over to him. And I believe most of the meetings now are they're kind of hybrid, so you can do it by Zoom as well. But I'll get you that info.
Yeah, if there is a form I need to sign, I have a batch of things to sign with Paul tomorrow, so that'll work out.
And they gave me a form. If I have it at my desk, so if you need to sign it, it'll be ready.
You do have the nomination form, Paul?
They did give me one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can add it to the list. Okay. Well, that concludes kind of the opening part of the meeting. We do have two public hearings on today's agenda. The first one is the continuation of special permit 9414, which is 242 Mansfield Avenue, which is an application for site plan approval and special permits for a marijuana establishment and 25 or more parking spaces with Solar Retail Norton. I do see Stu Clark from the applicant on the line, as well as Andre. So thank you again both very much for being here this evening. Paul, I know since our last meeting we did have a peer review on the traffic study come in. I don't believe there are any additional new materials, correct?
That's correct, and I don't see the peer reviewer here, but I can just briefly summarize the results, which was this project, he confirmed their traffic consultants' work that there wouldn't be a significant impact in traffic. Looking at peak hour, factoring in the 240Bs that were recently, or one's been approved, the other is in a couple of weeks. We expect the ZBA to approve it. So, but as far as what's happening on Mansfield, there really was not an issue. I mean, potentially internal, there could be some things, but nothing that would trigger need for mitigation, any more significant impacts that are already there.
I think, Paul, if you want to pass along a little kudos to them, I thought it was very helpful that they also they found that the city of Santa Rosa, California actually had a specific parking per square foot ratio that they had used for cannabis retail.
Yeah.
And they included that in the report, which was nice to like see and validate that we were thinking about things in the right mindset, since California's been doing this a little bit longer than Massachusetts has. So.
Right. And it's a growing field. No
Pun intended.
No, absolutely not. But, it's, the data is only as good as how many types of uses exist. So, marijuana retail, it's growing, and obviously in California, Colorado, Oregon, so of course Massachusetts, but it's not everywhere. So data is going to be a little bit behind what's actually happening, but that was a good thing that he found that comparison.
Yeah. Okay. Stu or Andre, I'm not sure if either of you have any additional updates that you wanted to pass along based on additional conversations you've had with abutters or additional materials or anything like that before I go to the members of the board for if they have anything further.
From an engineering point of view, all we believe we were waiting for was that traffic study, and it came back as Paul described, and we were happy with that. So from an engineering point of view, I don't think we're going to be changing plans at all. I'm unsure if Andre had conversations with anybody else or if he wants to add any comments here.
Sure, Stu, I appreciate that. I haven't really had any material discussion since our last session. I did get a call from the Norton Cooperative mobile home and had a pleasant discussion with them again about one of the upcoming concerts that are happening, but we were able to handle that terrifically, and so nothing really new to report to the board today. Really excited to get started. So,
okay, thank you both. Do any of the members of the board have any additional questions for the applicant here based on further reading of the materials that we have, or anything else further based on the traffic peer review, which is obviously new?
I've got a couple questions, Mr. Chairman.
Please go ahead.
Wanted to double check the trees at the rear of the property. Are those all going to be staying?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful. Second thing, I guess for you, Stu, also, since the building has a garage door, are they going to need a water oil separator?
Yeah, they will need an oil water separator. That's correct. As part of the plumbing code, any overhead door that a vehicle can access has to have an oil water separator. They used to call them MBC separators before it goes into the sewers. That is correct, sir.
I just didn't see it on the site plans, but I was curious.
Yeah, Chair, can I just interject on that? So Stu, this issue has come up just recently with one of the 40B projects at 253 Mansfield. So I definitely suggest reaching out to the Water and Sewer Department, Frank Fournier, the superintendent, to make sure, because there's some issues going on with that other project. So just make sure that they're, you understand what they want to see from that.
Yeah, from my experience, that's typically part of the building permit and the plumbing permit.
It is. I'm sorry, it's not part of this, but just, you just want to get ahead of that.
Yeah, understood.
Kind of a don't kick a hornet's nest that's already riled up. Is that kind of your thinking there, Paul?
No, it's just when something comes along, I just want to make sure that, we pass information along to people.
Okay. Alan, do you have anything further?
Another one for Paul, maybe he can answer. I know at one point for 253 Mansfield, there was talk of a crosswalk going in. That have any steam, or is that a no-go?
Nah, that's a no-go. That wouldn't pass. Even the peer reviewers said that just would not pass MassDOT requirements. I mean, it's a mid-block crossing, and
yeah, I just remember it coming up.
Yeah, it did, and I think we need to take a very comprehensive look at this area and see all the different improvements that really need to go in. Crosswalks would be one of them, but I'd like to see what else we could do there.
Okay. Any other members of the board have anything further that they wanted to ask the applicants here or get further clarification on?
I have one, Tim.
Go ahead, Julie.
So I think, Stu, this is probably more for you. So in looking just at the traffic study, which I don't have any problems with, I just wanted to kind of, I guess, pick your brain a little bit about maybe pavement markings. I'm worried about how much stacking is going to happen on your property if people can't come out and, let's say, take the left turn, right? Like they're going to stack up in your parking area. Is there any thought of maybe as people pull in to have them kind of immediately turn right and to go into that kind of portion of the parking lot? I know it'll be two-way in and out, but you might want to think about maybe some striping or some ways to kind of funnel the traffic in, maybe in two patterns. Because I'm just worried that if you guys get a significant amount of stacking, you don't want that to impede how people park and the circulation within the parking lot.
Understood.
Just didn't know if you gave that some thought, that's all.
Yeah, we made all the roads or the access around the building wide enough for two cars to get through side by side. So we try to, alleviate any problems we could have, but we're certainly not adverse to putting some signs and arrows to help mitigate traffic.
Yeah, I think that might help just in your striping plan, maybe to think about some arrows so people, kind of can see the multiple ways. I mean, the parking lot is set up well with a lot of different access points, so I think you guys have got a good layout. Maybe just some additional kind of arrows here and there, I think might help direct people to say, you can actually circle around the entire building. You're not going to get stuck in this corner, should you, turn in and kind of immediately, go to the right. So just some food for thought there, and just thinking about if people stack on the property as they're trying to exit, to make sure you've got good circulation and you don't kind of get a traffic jam in there.
That's some great input. Thank you.
Obviously, all of that is contingent on people reading the signs and the arrows, but you can only do so much sometimes.
Maybe a little bit will help, Tim. I don't know.
Okay. Anything further from additional members of the board? Okay. And I guess I'll open this up to see. There are a couple of names here. I see you, Peter, but I'll open this up for if any members of the public have any comments that they'd like to make. Please use the hand-raising icon, the reaction button in the Zoom meeting, and you can raise your virtual hand, as Peter has so effortlessly demonstrated here. So Peter, if you'd like to make a comment, please go for it.
Yes, Peter J. Wiggins, on Remainder, not 157 Mansfield Ave, Trail 43. And I use that road a lot of times, and it can get busy. And I use that road to go to Airport, and then it can get busy, and I use a lot of caution to walking on that road, and it's time that the town needs to take a look at what to do at 140, because it is a busy road and it can get busier during carnival times, and pretty soon next year, 2022, the PGA open at the TPC of Boston.
Yeah, that'll be, are they back here again in 22, or is it back in, oh, it's 22, yeah. Not 21, but 22, yeah, you're right. Okay. I'll give a moment to see if there's anybody additional members of the public who are looking forward to comment and are maybe having a bit of a struggle coming off mute here for a second. But given that my rambling is continued to the last minute without needing any further, I will look to members of the board to either if they have anything further they want to ask, or Stu or Andre, if you guys are comfortable closing the public hearing, given everything else that's in motion on your side.
I believe we're comfortable.
I would agree. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, I will motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Julie, for the motion and Steve for the second. Is there any further discussion on the motion to close the public hearing for special permit 9414?
Chair, can I ask a question? Because this has come up in prior projects about closing the public hearing before you've gone over conditions. Because if we start going over conditions, you don't have the ability now to ask the applicant questions should anything come up.
Understood. I'll defer to the rest of the board here if they feel there are any conditions that they feel they want additional clarification on or have questions about. I don't think I have any at this point, but I am obviously only one member of the board. Paul, did you have a tracking sheet going for this project?
We do. Scott has it. I need to update it tomorrow, just from the comments tonight. But if you'd like, I can pull it up.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay.
Tim, while Paul works on that, I think we just had the one condition from John's review that I know Stu was fine with, that we'd include. God forgive me, I can't think of the exact condition right now, dealing with stormwater.
Yeah,
it's that first one right there, yeah.
Oh, cool, okay, there we go.
Right.
Okay. So there are all the conditions that we've tracked as we've gone along this. So again, we have the groundwater, which would be subject to further testing. I think we're all on the same side on that one. We've talked about the fencing. We've talked about the screening, which we've talked about again this evening. Signage, we've discussed. Hours of operations, I believe that has been discussed and is in the materials that we have. Discussed public parking. I know in the last meeting we talked about it dealing with events at the Xfinity Center. Talked about employee count. Conservation is not being involved in this decision, and that is it, other than what we discussed this evening. Further that anybody would like to ask, or in terms of how these conditions would be potentially incorporated into a decision that we want to get clarification on before we close the public hearing. I'll go with a speak now or forever hold your peace kind of moment here.
Chair, and one question, going back over the zoning bylaw, there is a condition about surety to, essentially dismantle the building should something happen and the applicant doesn't do it. Andre, Stu, help me remember, did you all put any sort of decommissioning or surety in the report?
We did, yep. It's a $10,000 bond that is included to ensure that the decommissioning and proper disposal of all marijuana products is insured. So it's in there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Is that part of the community host agreement or part of the state's whole process?
I believe it's part of the special permit requirement that you folks have.
Bylaw, yeah.
Yeah, it's
okay. Okay, so it's our bylaw. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Paul, for bringing that one up.
It's a great question.
Okay. So we do have we do still have a motion and on the floor. Hearing no further comments kind of around that motion, I would be looking to call a vote on that motion. So Wayne, I will start again with you to close the public hearing. And Julie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So to close the public hearing for special permit 9414. Is there any further action on this agenda item at this time? Or in terms of voting to approve or not? Or do members prefer that we move toward drafting a decision and voting on that at a subsequent meeting? I know we've gone back and forth about the procedure and how we want to approach this probably half a dozen times in the past year.
I guess my only question would be, is there a standard list of conditions that are included on every?
There are.
But there are extra conditions identified in the marijuana bylaw. And they're pretty straightforward, and based on what we've discussed, I can feel comfortable just putting a draft together to present to you all.
I'm personally okay with taking a vote on approval pending conditions. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Steve, for the motion and Kevin for the second. Is there any further discussion on that motion? And Steve, was this for the special permit, site plan, or both? I'm sorry, I didn't clarify at the initial.
That's what I was just looking at. If we can do both, we'll probably have to do them separately. So I'll do it for the special permit.
Okay. And Kevin, that's still good with you, obviously?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There's 2 special permits, marijuana, and then the 25 more and more parking spaces.
Okay, so we'll have 3 motions here. So Steve, I'm going to assume that this is for the marijuana establishment. Okay. Okay. Hearing no further discussion from members of the board, I will move to the vote. Wayne?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So that is the first special permit for 25 more parking spaces, again, pending conditions. For the marijuana establishment, we still have additional special permits for 25 or more parking spaces and the site plan approval.
A motion to approve the special permit for 25 additional parking spaces.
A second.
Okay, thank you, Steve, for the motion and Kevin for the second. Once again, is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Wayne?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So one more piece of this puzzle.
Motion to approve the site plan.
Second.
The dynamic duo does it again. Thank you, Steve, for the motion and Kevin for the second. Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve the site plan for 242 Mansfield Avenue? Pending conditions. Hearing none. Wayne?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And I will vote yes.
Thank you, guys.
We'll review the conditions and the draft decision at our next meeting. Stu and Andre, you're welcome to attend the meeting virtually, but again, the public hearing closed, so we won't be asking for comment or listening to comments.
Understood. Thank you for your
Thank you very
time.
much.
It's been a pleasure working with you guys.
Thank you both.
Likewise, I just want to say thank you, everyone. Thank you, members of the board. We're really excited to break ground on this project. It's going to be really exciting, and I can't wait for you to see what we're going to build there. Really looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay, the next item up on our agenda is, again, public hearing. Again, this is labeled as PRE 9685, which is the preliminary subdivision plan for Blue Star Business Park Phase 2 with Condyne Partners. Again, this is the preliminary subdivision plan, and Paul, I know you have put in the folders for all the members of the board, both the plans submitted by Condyne as well as a summary of our bylaws around subdivisions, as well as some additional materials around how the state's subdivision control works. Correct? Is there anything that you wanted to add kind of off the top here for members of the board, or?
Yeah, just in general, per our bylaw, when we have a non-residential subdivision, it's a two-part process. Well, there's the preliminary, which is what you have in front of you, which then will lead to a definitive plan. And just, the simple way of looking at a subdivision is it lays out the lots and any major infrastructure, including a roadway. So it does not, you're not going to be approving development on that. With a subdivision, that comes after the subdivision, after the definitive subdivision is approved. So with the preliminary, you have opportunities to make comments, which then can be endorsed, and then those would be then included into the definitive plan.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. I do see a number of members of Condyne on the call here. I will defer to Jeff, your team, to take it away. I'm not sure if anybody wanted to put anything up on the screen, but you should have the ability to share your screen should you choose to do so.
Sure. So thank you for that. We appreciate the opportunity. And as we start the Phase 2 process, with us on the line is Don O'Neill, my brother, as you know, as well, and partner at Condyne, as well as Brandon Carr from DePret Engineering. So I'll let Brandon start with the drawings, and then we can go into further from there.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Brandon Carr from DePret Engineering. So as Paul said, we're here for the preliminary subdivision, which is basically the layout of the lot for Phase 2 and the main road for Phase 2. So I'll just share my screen. I'll run through the plans. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we do.
So just to kind of get everybody's bearings, you can see the Blue Star Business Park here, 495, obviously 123. So, this front piece on the left here is Phase 1. So the larger building, Building 5, and Building 4, and then the Building 7, which is under construction now on the northern piece side of Leonard Street. So the area of Phase 2 is kind of this area here, this large field, and then this wooded area here. So in a minute I'll show you the plans, but basically the Phase 2 roadway, which you'll see on those plans, connects to Leonard Street just east of Building 7. So right around in this area here, kind of snakes through these woods. There's an existing cart path out there. If you walk out there today, you can kind of just make it out here in the trees. And then Phase 2 is out in this field and just to the south of this field, the proposed future development. So here are the plans that were submitted. So again, this is Leonard Street down the bottom here. That kind of bend in the road that I just pointed out on the aerial. This was that wetland And then that area back here, just above where it says sheet 3, that's where that large field was. So you can see the roadway comes in here. It's about 2,050 feet of road coming into a cul-de-sac here. Zoom in a little bit. So coming in here to a cul-de-sac here for future lots. One development lot here, right off the Leonard Street, and then we have it laid out as 4 more lots in the back here, but these may be combined into 2 building lots as we progress with the building with the phase 2 design. And those will all get access off the road that's being proposed here. I'll just show the lotting plan quick, and then I'll just get back onto the road design so you can kind of see the right-of-way would come in off of Leonard Street curve to that cul-de-sac here, and you can see the proposed lots out here. So lot 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then there's a remaining piece back here. So just to go back to the proposed plan. So the plans you have, first few sheets are existing conditions. As you saw in the aerial, the majority of the site is wooded. There's wetlands on, let's switch back to the aerial here quick. There's where the road kind of comes through here, there's wetlands to the north and wetlands to the south. And you have that large field and some wooded area back here to be developed. The road terminates roughly right here in this field, where that cul-de-sac comes in. So again, just the road layout, and then the plan and profile sheet kind of show the design of the road, but it's typical 30-foot wide proposed roadway, similar to kind of what was improved on Leonard Street. Along the way, kind of at the low point, you'll see a series of infiltration basins and bioretention areas that treat stormwater. A water main will be extended up the road to the cul-de-sac, as will a gravity sewer will extend basically to the end of the road. There's a proposed pump station up closer to Leonard Street here. So sewer will gravity back to that pump station, and then that pump station would pump to the pump station that's already installed for phase 1. That's right to the east of building 5. That's online today. So that force main has been installed in Leonard Street. That's what building 7 is connecting to as well. Water, I said, yeah, stormwater. There's no floodplain alterations. There's obviously we're within proximity to both wetlands on each side. We have submitted this plan to conservation, and we have conservation approval for the design and stormwater treatment for the road and work within the wetlands. I think that was back in either late March or early April. We received approval from the Conservation Commission. And those are the same plans that we submitted to you. So that's kind of the overview. As Paul said, we're looking for, this is the first step, preliminary subdivision for the design of the road and the breakout of the lots. Once, assuming we get that approved, we'll be before you again for the definitive subdivision, which the plans are pretty much for the roadway anyways at that level now, since we have to go through the 2 steps. So that's, when we go through the engineering and things like that. So we would be resubmitting to you immediately for that upon approval of the preliminary. And then we're looking at the design of these future lots out here now. So we probably have site plan applications for those buildings into you shortly, hopefully after the definitive subdivision. So that's kind of the next steps on those. That's kind of the overview. If you have any specific questions or any about the design or the layout of the lots, feel free to ask.
Okay. I'll open up to members of the board if they have any specific questions they'd like to ask at this time. And obviously, if there's a specific page that you're trying to reference in the materials, Brandon, if you can try and skim to that so we're all not trying to skip through different documents at the same time. I guess kind of to break the ice here, has this, since this plan was the initial kind of Blue Star Business Park, before it was called Blue Star Business Park, was kind of being discussed, does this plan reflect any kind of changes with this kind of phase 2 part of the plan at this point from that kind of initial look? Because obviously real estate changes sometimes by the minute, and especially over the past year with COVID and everything. Are there any kind of changes that we see at this point with these plans, or are those something that would just be reflected further downstream?
So the future lot layout we show here and the roadway all matches kind of the previous iterations of the design. As we get into the specific lot design, obviously, if tenants are chosen or if it's a spec building, changes might be made at that point, but the plans that you have in front of you is consistent with what was previously before you.
Okay. And this is maybe something, again, for further kind of down the road kind of discussion. But as we get further and further away from Route 123, I think that creates further incentive for potential traffic coming out of those properties to try to come off of this new road and potentially turn left and start rolling through kind of more of a residential area rather than through the remainder of Blue Star. Are there plans for signage in additional direction?
I can jump in there, Brandon, but yes, there is signage that would be on the opposite side of Leonard Street as you come down that driveway. All trucks and everything is geared to go to the right, and if Brandon could zoom in on that entranceway, you can see that it's specifically designed to not allow trucks to go to the left and continue up Leonard Street. So that wide swath of the turning lane going up Leonard towards 123 is the way traffic will be directed.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any members of the board have questions regarding the preliminary subdivision plans that we have here?
I've got a couple, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Alan.
On this preliminary application, any of these abutters get noticed? The residents on, was it Janet and Carlton? How do we proactively
I think Paul can answer that one, Alan.
So, Alan, for a preliminary plan, there is not a requirement to notice abutters. They do, for whatever reason, our bylaws, our regulations say they have to provide the abutters list, but the notification doesn't happen until the definitive plan is submitted.
I guess it would just be, engaging them proactively as early as possible, since this is right in their backyard.
So to that point, Alan, I did reach out to a handful of people who we know have been interested in this project for that reason. So through emails. Some were not abutters, but we know that they were interested in living in the area. So we just wanted to be proactive and, have them feel like they're being brought in, to give them the opportunity to be brought in as early as possible.
Yeah, and I know in the initial stages that there was discussions with those abutters directly before this plan was even went before town meeting, if I'm correct, Jeff, going back in the Wayback Machine here.
That's correct. We met with all the neighborhood groups on the various close proximity to each of the sites as for Blue Star Phase 1 and Blue Star Phase 2.
Jeff, I wasn't at those meetings, but I assume they would have been noticed during the conservation piece of this, correct, too? That we just received approval on?
That would be correct, yes, through the abutters list.
Okay.
Second question, does Janet Drive, if Brandon could zoom in there, does that connect somehow? It looks like it's kind of open.
It doesn't connect today. There's actually kind of a row of trees that are here today, kind of not reflected on the aerial mapping. But we have had a preliminary meeting with town staff, DPW, police, fire about Phase 2, and they did request an emergency access be put there, so it'd be a gated access with a lock for emergency vehicles only. So we're incorporating that into the design of Phase 2 as we proceed.
So good eye, Alan.
Mr. Chair, future lot 1, are there any preliminary plans to put any type of a structure there, any type of building on lot 1?
So the way it's shown today, future lot 1 extends up and includes this proposed building here. So that lot line between 1 and 2 is over here.
Okay.
So that would consist that whole lot.
Gotcha. Further down the road though, on that lower portion of lot 1, I guess no?
No, that's, it's all wetland.
Gotcha. Cool.
Actually, I think it's wetland and pond.
In future lot 4, what's the road access to that lot?
It's, it would be through a driveway here across lot 3. We are looking at reconfiguring this area, to provide, a dedicated driveway here, but right now it's shown as a shared driveway through lot 3.
I guess I would ask the chair and Paul, is that okay for approving a subdivision plan using another building's, I guess, parking and drive to get access to an additional building on a different lot?
One mechanism would be to get a special permit for a common driveway, because you're connecting 2 lots.
And I know we did go through that with Blue Star Phase 1 as well. But I'm sure the content team is aware of that very intimately, given Phase 1. So, and they said, I think, as you mentioned, you're looking at reconfiguring Brandon a little bit, potentially that kind of configuration. So, but yeah, good thought there, Kevin.
Well, I know Phase 1 is quite a bit more simpler. It's right off of Leonard Street. I don't recall what the shared lot was. I'm guessing between building 4 and 5, but that common drive is right off Leonard Street, whereas this one would be off of a cul-de-sac at the end of a long drive. So a little bit unique and different.
Okay. Any other members of the board have further questions they'd like to ask the applicant at this time?
Chair, if I may.
Go for it.
So for the profile of the road, are there sidewalks on that road, Brandon, or is it just like two-way traffic?
There's no proposed sidewalks, just two-way industrial traffic.
We're limited on our sides and our, I guess through conservation, there's no more room to extend and go sideways either way. And including in some of those areas, Julie, we do have retaining walls to hold things back. So we're kind of capped, and all the utilities are within the roadway themselves as well. So gas, electric, and water, and sewer.
Okay, so I'll just throw this out, food for thought for later on. And thinking about the connection to Leonard, the employees that you might have here, we might want to think about, I know we talked about GATRA and a transit element or potentially a stop in the first phase. Depending on what the shifts are like, what the influx of people is, my worry would just be if someone was walking to work or trying to access the sites, we might just want to have that thought process going just in the back of your minds about, shuttle transit service potentially, if you think that would be something that employees or employers would want to have access to those back lots, because it is kind of pulled back off Leonard, knowing that those improvements have been made to Leonard, there are sidewalks. So just food for thought on how we might want to think about that for access to the site.
Thank you, Julie.
And I think I'll make one more comment, although I know not necessarily, the correct time and place yet, but, I definitely want you guys to think about some some buffering, you know, from the residential properties that are adjacent to it. I know we've talked about this before, and I'm sure, Jeff, you're way ahead of me on this, but I do, you know, want you guys to really think about that. It is a little bit of a different, you know, entity, to Kevin's point, just because, you know, we are really so close to those homes on Carlton, Downing, Janet. So, you know, definitely want to see when you guys come back, you know, your thoughts on that, noise, light, you know, those type of elements. I think in general, you know, I kind of share some of Kevin's concerns about that common drive, think that through a little bit, but otherwise, I mean, I think your lot layout is good.
Good. Yeah, those will be addressed in the individual site plans when you do come back.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yep.
Anything?
I don't know your business, guys, but I'm guessing that you've broken up the overall phase 2 into these particular lots to allow for future, you know, acquisition, purchase, rent, however it's done with different tenants or owners, which explains the lot 1 extending all the way up to that building in the top of the screen. But I'm thinking, if I were interested in developing lot 4, and I don't have a relationship with the owner or the renter of lot 3, and I have to share a driveway, I'm guessing that may be problematic if I don't agree to that. But that's your business. I just wanted to bring it up as a potential thought. And I know, Paul, we can approve, you know, a common driveway, a special permit for a common driveway, or a shared driveway, but that, I'm guessing, could be problematic on our end. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks about it, but, you know, we're approving the road in the lots, and because the road doesn't reach out to lot 4, again, you know, I don't know. I'd like to know everyone else's thoughts on that.
If Kevin, if you don't mind, I can chime in. So on phase 1 of Blue Star, there was a very comprehensive reciprocal easement agreement between the buildings and a maintenance agreement that goes with those. So those are in deed to each of the buildings to make sure that any future owner, tenant, vice versa, whatever building's owner is there, is protected by those rights.
Okay. And did the board provide a special approval for that? And perhaps we should do the same for this, whether it's just a shared drive or a common driveway approval.
Yeah, that was a full special permit that was part of that whole set of plans. But yeah, that's something that we can definitely look at when we get to that point in the process.
If we approve the preliminary subdivision plan now, does that make it problematic and prevent us from making modifications to the definitive subdivision plan later, according to what we're talking about?
Paul, maybe you could weigh in a little bit on that, just in terms of kind of the blocking and tackling of processes and kind of what the preliminary may or may not lock us into doing as we move forward with the definitive.
Yeah, that's, so again, typically, you know, if not typically, but in a simple approach, if the preliminary lines up with the definitive, no issues, right? But there can be times where an applicant can come back with changes to the definitive. So the definitive does not have to match up with the preliminary. There can be instances where an applicant can come back with revised plans. The board at that point would have to determine, is it a substantive change from the preliminary or not? But I don't know enough. I would have to really dive into that question and work with town council.
Understood. Thank you, Paul.
Brandon, can you go to the plan that has the parcels laid out? Not this one that has the potential building layout, but the actual how you're going to cut up. Yeah. So So it's kind of, I don't know, spitballing here off Kevin's, kind of thoughts. I'm seeing you have frontage on the road for that lot 12, but it seems like instead of pulling the drive over there, we've got some retention and things like that. So the frontage is there. It's just not that you're going to use that frontage for access.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a pond and some wetlands and stuff in the way to make a road through here. And keeping it in here just keeps, less disturbance and less overall footprint, especially on this side where that wetland is present. And then there's some floodplain over there to deal with and things like that. So.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Anything
One
further?
more question.
Go for it, Alan.
Any plans for the remaining parcel, that 2.2 acres, is that developable in the future, or is that wetlands? I can't really see. Right to the south of Janet Drive.
There's no there is some wetlands over here. It's mostly all wetlands. You can see, tough to see, but this line right here I'm kind of tracing is the edge of wetland. And we don't have it mapped off that site, but I assume it kind of goes like this. I think it's probably about 80 to 90% wetland over there. So no development plans.
Right, we can't access it.
So is that a buildable lot, or should it be marked as not a buildable lot? I don't know, Alan, is that kind of what your question was?
I do. It was called out as remaining parcel, and it had acreage to it, so I didn't know if there was plans in the future, or if it was
But does it have access to it?
maybe through lot 11. I can't tell. They touch.
Yeah, there's a
But if
little.
it's all wetlands, it's mute anyway.
Yeah, there's a little bit of upland right here on this kind of shared piece here, but there's nothing to get to. That there, it's pretty much all wet.
Okay. Anything further from members of the board for the applicants here on this? Again, this is the preliminary subdivision.
I may have missed this at the beginning, but what's the difference between the map that shows future lots 1 through 4 and the other one that shows proposed lots 8 through 12?
Yeah, so this plan here, the engineering plan, is a little bit dated. It's a couple months old because it's the one that went to conservation, and that just shows different lot numbers. The lots themselves, the lines and everything is all the same. It's just, this one goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this one goes 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's just same lots, just different numbering, but
In our side, we wanted to make sure there was no confusion as you continued up Blue Star, because we end at building 7, right next door, which is under construction now, so we wanted to continue to 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.
We've done that mistake in the past where we confused the same lots.
The KISS method proving out once again. Okay. Anything further from Steve or Wayne? I don't mean to put you on the spot, either of you, but just wanted to make sure you had the opportunity. If you had any questions about this plan at this point.
Oh, looks good to me.
Okay. With that said, again, this is a hearing that is open to the public. If there's any members of the public who do want to comment at this point on the preliminary subdivision, I mentioned it kind of at the outset of the previous public hearing, but if you want to use the reactions button in the Zoom meeting, you can raise your virtual hand just like this and lower it just like that if you would like to make a comment. And obviously it'll pop right up to the top of the screen if you do. But given that I've rambled on for about a minute here and nobody's taken there we go. Thank you very much, sir. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Frank Betancourt, 10 Janet Street. I think I'm one of the most impacted abutters in this project. We did have conversations with Condyne. Actually, they were good conversations. They listened to a lot of the concerns. But to answer Mr. Bosley, those conversations took place 4.5 years ago. So things have changed. The plans have changed. And I'm not sure that there were any follow-up discussions with any of the abutters since those meetings. The big change was it went from, I believe it was 2 buildings. Some of the folks down toward the Carlton Way, Downing, had concerns about the heights of the buildings. So Condyne came back with a new configuration, which to some folks was good, but to others may not have been a big improvement. I know the group that I was in, when we were invited to speak with Condyne, there wasn't a lot of concern about that, although Condyne had mentioned that there was concerns in other groups. Some things were made, so I think they did listen, and they've been, responding to the abutters. But what I really wanted to say to this group tonight, this planning board, to a number of the board members here, and I know some of you are new, thank you very much for your concern with the abutters. There wasn't much of that in phase 1. There wasn't a lot of conversations about abutters. I presented myself to the planning board at least one occasion to talk about abutters. I've come to many meetings while phase 1 was going on so I could learn what was happening. There wasn't a lot of conversations about abutters, but I'm extremely pleased that there is now. And I think that needs to stay at the forefront because you're all right. This is a different phase. This does have different impact. So I think it becomes a much higher concern than the first phase, where most of us just watched to see what things were happening. I think that the board is actively asking the right questions so far, and I'm very happy to see that. And I'm hoping that when Condyne comes back with the individual building sites, that it doesn't get too far out ahead. The road comes in, then we need to do this, we need to do that. I think we need to keep a very clear eye on the next building up to make sure that we're not getting ourselves into a position where we can't make changes, or we can't make amendments, or we can't ask for things to be changed because it's too far gone. So we need to keep a very clear picture on the entire build. And I get the sense that this team is doing that. I get the sense that there's people on this board that are very clear about what's going on. Because some of these configurations, I'm very concerned about this remaining parcel, and I was glad to hear someone bring it up. What is going to happen there? Why is that marked out like that? You can see clearly that there's a 10-foot access over to Birch Street. And trust me, many have tried to come up that access way. And we need to take steps to make sure those kind of things don't happen. That's a 10-foot, everybody goes, oh, you know what? It's going through wetlands. There's no way that's going to happen. I spent 3 years in court fighting someone who got permission to come up that way. I spent 3 years in court to stop it. So no one can tell me that it can't happen. Okay, it can happen. So we need to be very, very careful about how this is done. And I can't tell you how pleased I am with the questioning that took place tonight. And I look forward to talking to the O'Neills in the future about what we can do here. Because I think this can be a win for everybody. I think there's ways to mitigate problems for the abutters, because this is a big impact. I don't think that the people of Norton expected 5 or 6 folks that live in the area to take the brunt of the impact. I think there's a common sense that we're all going to work together to make this work. So thank you. I thank you for the questions. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Jeff and your team, I'll just kind of say, I know you probably had contact information from people from a few years ago. If there's a specific way that you would like abutters to contact you. I'm not sure if the best way is to provide something to Paul and he can relay that to anybody who reaches out to him. Is that something that makes sense to you, or?
Yeah, we'll put a system in place so we can get to all the abutters at the property. So Paul and our team will work together to make sure that that's being addressed with every abutter.
Okay. So, so again, if you would like to get in contact with the content team, that flow of communication can flow. Paul, not to put something else on your plate, but it seems like you're the man in the middle for that at this point.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
No problem. Look forward to it.
Mr. Chair, and also Paul, there are, obviously, you see on the map here who the direct abutters are, but is there a way we can extend that list to include anyone that potentially could be impacted? For example, on the other side of Janet Drive, on the north side, leading all the way up to Bird Street, there are a bunch of residences there that would be impacted through the visual line of sight, as well as on Carlton Ave, and I think it's Downey Drive, on the north side of Downey Drive, on the inside of the loop. There are people that have that will be visually impacted, even though they're not direct abutters to any of the land here. So perhaps you can, as a courtesy, notify all of those folks as well to participate in the meetings and discussions.
Yeah, I know at the outset, Paul, you had mentioned that he had reached out to a few people that he knew were interested parties here. I obviously don't know exactly who, but definitely there'll be notices going out for the definitive subdivision, and we have the list here. I think the abutters list is actually required as submittal for the application here, so that we can review that directly and see if there's anything that we think is missing.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My point is that the direct abutters we need to notify, and I know that Con9's done a great job communicating with them, but there are many other people that would not make that list of direct abutters that are impacted. So, as I mentioned, the other side of the street from Mr. Betancourt on Janet Drive, leading all the way up to Bird Street, as well as the inside of the Downing Drive loop on the other side of the road at the very top of your screen. So, if perhaps all of those residences could be queried and notified as well, even though they may not be direct abutters, I think that would be helpful.
I think we had done something like that before on another project, but we did it as so many feet from the borders of the property. You know, say 300 feet or 500 feet, whatever it was.
Steve, that's what I was going to say. 300 feet. I'm remembering must be the same thing you are.
Yeah. That way you don't miss any, or you don't, it doesn't seem like it's picking and choosing who you're actually gonna notify. But yeah, I'd be for that as well.
Well, the abutters, we are required to notice abutters within 300 feet of a property.
Yeah, I think at one point we extended that, because we can extend that, so we can say we can add it up to 500 feet or however.
Okay.
I believe it's abutters of abutters within 300 feet, correct, Paul? Is that
right? So the list gets generated by the assessor's office, and that becomes the certified list.
Maybe my point is to the folks at Condyne, the O'Neills, instead, when you reach out to the neighbors, go beyond just the legal requirement of what an abutter is, and maybe reach out to everybody in the neighborhood that potentially could be impacted. For example, Mr. Betancourt, his next door neighbor, he would not be an abutter if it wasn't for that little sliver of land that goes down to the remaining parcel, as well as anyone else from that side of the street. So there are people on the other side of the street that aren't on this map that are not technically abutters, but would be impacted and would be important to have in the discussions, as well as I mentioned, people that live on the other side of Downing Drive who have a visual impact across the way. So just as a courtesy, do more than what the law requires is my point.
Mm-hmm. We can request that list to be extended, correct? Well,
if you did, it was before my time, so I'm not sure.
No,
I can certainly look and see if you have that ability.
I don't recall specifically what that was done in reference to at this moment in time. There's one part of my brain that thinks it was around the marijuana overlay district, but I don't trust that part of my brain. So that would be something, again, that if we can circle back on that outside of this, that's something that we can look at as this progresses.
I'll look into it. It was not for marijuana. I do know that. In my 3 years, we haven't. The action must have taken place before my time. But I'll look at the bylaw. I'll if I need to, I'll confirm with town council and see what.
Well, we have to follow the bylaws as far as who to notify, but the board has always had the ability to extend that if we want to, or if we decide to.
Okay.
Yeah, at that point it becomes a question of compiling the list and footing the bill. So that's and I think that it makes sense to explore with, as you said, Paul, town council, just to cross the T's and dot the I's there. Are there any further comments from members of the public or members of the board in relation to the preliminary subdivision plan we have in front of us here?
Mr. Chairman, one more just general question. What's the time frame for construction, after the definitive, and what's Condine's idea of how long this is going to take?
Well, from there, after the definitive, we have site plan approval that would have to go on for each of the lots, each of the buildings that would be proposed. So, we're probably not seeing something until, I'm going to say mid to end of July, maybe beginning of August. And remember that we can't get there until the roadway is partially allowing access to get there. So the buildings may be extended even further after that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I don't see any further questions coming in from abutters and members of the public or members of the board. Absent that, we'd be looking for action on the item in front of us, whether that would be to approve the preliminary or to, if there was anything further that we wanted to get further clarification on prior to doing so, continuing.
Do we have to close the public hearing first?
I believe we would. Thank you, Steve. But I think to that point, those questions do kind of go hand in hand. If there are items where people do feel like they want additional clarification or before approving the preliminary subdivision, then we obviously wouldn't want to close the public hearing. But order of operations would be correct there, Steve.
Well, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you, Steve, for the motion and Alan for the second. Is there any further discussion on the motion to close the public hearing for preliminary subdivision marked PRE 9685? Okay, hearing none, I will go to the members for a vote. I apologize, everybody's out of order and from when I was going before. So I will start with Steve.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Wayne.
Yes.
Julie.
Yes.
And I apologize, I'm missing somebody, right? Alan, sorry, you're right at the top, that's why.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So you're above me in the list of people, so I started myself and worked my way down, and I missed you. Won't do it again.
Don't forget me.
Okay. Let's see, public hearing is now closed. Is there further action on the agenda item?
I'll move to, is it approve or endorse, or how are we doing it?
It would be to endorse.
I'll move to endorse.
Second.
Thank you, Steve, for the motion and Alan for the second. Is there any further discussion on the motion to endorse the preliminary subdivision plan for Blue Star Business Park Phase 2? Okay, hearing none, I'll start with Alan.
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So, this will be endorsed, and we will see the Condyne team again shortly, I'm sure.
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. That is the last item on the agenda today. There is one matter of kind of planning board business that I'll bring up, which obviously couldn't have been on the agenda posted Friday because it was just released by the governor this afternoon. But in case anybody does not see all of the updates that go in all of the groups, we talked a little bit about virtual meetings for the board. A press release from the governor today said that the governor is filed legislation to extend the changes to open meeting law through September 1st of this year, which in the press release is to allow additional time to consider possible permanent changes to open meeting law to streamline flexibility in conducting open meetings through electronic meetings and other means. So, I'll take that as a stay tuned, but I think as we kind of talked about in our last meeting, there's value to having people participate via Zoom or other means, and apparently we're not the only ones, so that may be something that kind of stays in some shape or form as part of the state's wider open meeting law, which is helpful, but Peter, did you want to say anything? I know you want to have in-person meetings. You want to get out of there.
Yes, that's right. I can't wait to get back to in-person meetings soon. Probably around June and July, right?
We will see, Peter. I will be happy to get out of my house once in a while as well, that's for sure.
I'll be, seeking, direction from the town manager, to start looking into going back to in-person. Of course, one of the considerations will be knowing that when we have to notice items. So just today I had to notice for a couple ZBA items in June, but we're still going to do those remotely because we haven't received direction yet to have in person. So, Peter,
because you're noticing based on the virtual matter of the virtual nature of the meeting, not the in-person location. Understood.
Right. Till we know,
And you're trailing by
3 weeks.
3 weeks, 4 weeks. Okay.
So we have to give the paper time to get it ready, so it's about 3 weeks. So, but
and the notice needs to go out. How far in advance of the meeting? A month?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So okay. So basically, anytime we want to make a change, we need to. It's going to be a month out, give or take.
Yeah, except if it's an item that's being continued, it's just the first meeting that gets noticed. But we don't have any items.
But we will soon. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have a big one, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of towns that have gone to hybrid that it seems to work quite well.
And we can.
We have the capability?
Yes, in a couple of the rooms we could do it. In fact, they reminded us when we had our first, Steve, remember when we had, you and I when we had the conference call, we were at the media center. So it'll be sort of similar to that, except they have screens, TV monitors that, somebody could be participating remotely. We'll also need to see what the governor decides to do in terms of your remote participation, because it was pretty strict before COVID. I don't remember if it was just limited to one person, but
I've blacked all of that period out of my brain, but it sounds about right. Yeah.
It was just.
Hopefully I can return with my notepads and taking notes at the meeting soon, right?
Sounds good, Peter. We'll wait for the governor. But yeah, again, if anybody has any thoughts, preferences, concerns about how this is going forward, I think the press release today is positive and shows kind of actual constructive thinking, which is nice. But please communicate through Paul, and he has open lines of communication with the town manager about all this stuff. So that's that. Paul, did you want to give a plug for the master plan open house?
Right. We have our meeting next Thursday, virtually, of course. The draft plan will be released that day. So we've given some feedback on the initial draft, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's doing a lot. It did a great job of capturing the public input, and I think it's going to give us a good map in different directions to look at things such as land use, economic development, our conservation, recreation. So it'll be the same format. It'll be an open house, and then it'll remain online for 2 weeks. So we'd like, I'm pretty certain I've given you all the link to it. The other thing I wanted to announce too is tomorrow we're having, we received a grant, a local rapid recovery grant that the state has to help businesses hurt by COVID. So I wrote a grant for trying to brand it the West Main Street District. And so we're having a meeting tomorrow with the businesses and other stakeholders to go over the survey and the data for what's happened in the area, but then to have it start the conversation about what are the types of improvements that can happen that could help those businesses really thrive and hopefully make this a true district. So that'll be.
I was going to bring it up, Paul.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see you, Steve. The challenge with meeting with businesses, they're all on different times. So we're doing it at 3:00, just for thinking that the restaurants will probably not be that busy, but part of this is communicating with them and finding out what really works for them. So we'll be flexible with it. Just two other quick things. We just submitted a grant application for Reed and Barton for what we call the Phase 2 assessment. We received a grant back in 2019, Phase 1, for a Phase 1 assessment, which was completed in February, and now we're going for the Phase 2, which is the full picture of what's out at that site. I will be hitting the submit button hopefully by tomorrow or Thursday in support of this West Main Street District. We're also applying for what they call a parking management plan. It's another consultant service that I'm hoping, what we're trying to do is really align what we're doing with the local rapid recovery with parking management to help figure out the parking issues along this district. How can we make that a better thing? I mean, some of the survey respondents were telling us they have parking issues. So the consultant we're using for the local rapid recovery is the same consultant we would use if we get the parking management grant. So we're trying to.
How soon would you find out about that, Paul? I think that's great.
Well, it closes June 4th.
Okay.
So, it's taking several months for them to make announcements, so, hopefully by August.
Okay. No, that's perfect. Like,
Yeah.
really great. I mean, like, totally fits in with some of what we talked about during, like, village commercial core and
Yep.
thinking about properties that are coming on the market in that area. And their parking needs and/or limited sport parking on those sites. So that's awesome.
So,
Fantastic.
along with that too, Julie, thank you for reminding me, but, unfortunately, the Attorney General's office is so swamped. They haven't certified our October town meeting, which was Village Center and marijuana. So, of course, Andre and, they understand that it's approved, but not fully. But while I can't go into the specifics, there are a couple pending projects now in the Village Center core that happened because of the rezoning. So I hope we can announce it at some point, but not until the AG's office gives us the final approval of it. So, I want to bring that up because of all the work that we did on it. It could pay off into something really positive.
Oh, I certainly hope so. I hope those people are being patient.
They are, but I hate telling them we're still waiting. But again, the parking, and that was in the back of my mind writing that grant too, was the conversations that we had about the Village Center core, that what about parking? Because it's all on site. And so having a consultant look into that, and they were looking broader than just parking in terms of, well, how can this overlap into being a more pedestrian friendly? So anyway.
Oh yeah, they'll tie hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I wanted to add just because Paul has been outstanding on community outreach with this. He literally went door to door to get people to take this survey. And it just, I believe, went above and beyond. So I really appreciate it personally as a business owner in that district, and also as a resident. So thank you, Paul, for everything.
Well, I appreciate it, but one of the things, Steve, one thing that's been really driving me on this the last year was this feeling of helplessness when COVID was happening, and we had no way of reaching out to businesses with all this information from PPP to PPEs, and we didn't have information. I didn't have a way of reaching out effectively. I'm still needing to build it, but part of my goal is to try to really bridge between the town and the community and the business end of it. That's a big factor. So I hope we could be very successful with West Main Street, and that could potentially then grow out throughout town. But fortunately, we had a pretty good turnout of people who took the survey, which to me is a great thing, and it shows that people are interested, and we're going to have to just keep on, pounding the pavement, and that's good. That's what we should be doing. That's what I should be doing.
Yeah, I definitely spread the word on that survey for my neighboring businesses. So,
yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything further they wanted to share with the board?
Can't wait to get back to in-person meetings soon, right, y'all?
Sure, Peter.
All right.
In full disclosure, not living in Norton, I actually just kind of enjoy closing my laptop and walking downstairs. But I'll be there, Peter, with you. When they tell me
hybrid.
Yeah, I'm going to check into that.
I endorse that too, Alan. Hybrid, I think, is great.
I'm in this room all day long, so I need to leave.
I'm keeping all of I manage condos, and I'm keeping all of our condo meetings through Zoom at least until next year.
That's right. I'm going to be in the media center taking notes in person, while some people may be in person and some people may be on Zoom, right?
Right.
Yeah, be a whole new experience, Peter.
Well, I do know that, statewide, a lot of communities saw what we did, which was we actually had higher participation with Zoom than in person. And you think about, if you, when we had the rezoning discussions, we had 85 people on one call. Other than the middle school, where would we have had we couldn't have had it at any of our usual meeting spaces. It would have been really uncomfortable. And I hope the governor and the legislature is aware of that and will, offer the public at least the opportunity to come in. And especially since we would have the capabilities of allowing people to do it, why not? More people, that's good.
I don't know if KP is involved in any kind of messaging going up to Beacon Hill, but if they are and they're looking for experiences from town, I'm sure you won't be shy in sharing.
No, we won't. No, anything that if it allows more participation, that's a good thing.
1000% on that. That seems like as good a note as anybody to sign off on this evening. Does anybody want to take that ball and run with it?
Go with the hat trick. I think I motioned everything tonight, so I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Steve, for the motion and Kevin for the second. Is there any further discussion? Just kidding. Wayne?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Thank you all very much for your time this evening. Look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone. Good night.
If not before then, master plan.
At the master plan. I apologize.
Maybe next week.
Okay. Have a good night.